I count the dead for a living. Most people think vital records is just paper and stamps. Births go in one drawer, deaths in another, and the world keeps moving. In Grey County, a flat square of the Midwest, where the water tower is the tallest thing for miles, I sat behind a counter under fluorescent lights and checked boxes that said male or female, natural causes or accident, 7:14 p.m. or 3:02 a.m. My name is Eli Mercer. I am the person you see when you need a certified copy to settle an estate or close a bank account. I am polite. I am quick. I work alone on the late shift because I like the quiet. The first recall notice came on a Monday in October. The wind off the fields had a cold bite, and the courthouse smelled like wet coats and hot coffee. I found the letter in the inter-office mail tray. It was printed on county letterhead, blue seal and watermark, my department's address at the top. Subject, Death Certificate Recall. The name on the line below was Clara Noel. The case number was one I recognized, house fire on Pike Street in July. I had processed her certificate myself. The letter said the certificate had to be recalled, existing copies voided, record amended. No reason listed, a barcode. My own initials typed in the bottom corner, EM. I looked at the signature. It was mine. Digital signature block, Eli Mercer, Registrar's Office, with today's date. I had never seen a recall letter in 4 years. We amended for typos or a wrong middle initial. We did not recall a death. Death was final. I walked the letter to my supervisor, Marlene. She wore reading glasses on a chain and had the slow patience of someone who had worked the counter for 3 decades. "We do not recall death certs," she said without looking up. "Not a thing." I held out the letter. "Then what is this?" She took one glance at the seal and the barcode and pushed it back. "Probably a test print. Toss it. You are on night alone tonight. Just lock the door at 6. Back at my desk, I turned the paper over. The watermark was real. The barcode scanned in our system and opened Clara Noel's file. There was a new field I did not recognize. Reason for recall, pending. The action buttons below it were active, void, amend, reissue. I should have logged a ticket with IT. I should have left it for the morning. Instead, I clicked void because I thought that was the safest choice. The system stamped the file in red. Recall. It printed a list of copy holders. Fire investigator, insurance, hospital, next of kin. The printer spit out a stack of orange slips marked Notice of Recall. I slid them into envelopes because that was my job. Then I locked up and drove home in the dark. My rental was a small duplex on Birch Avenue, 2 turns off Main. It had a leaning mailbox and a thin maple that dropped yellow leaves on my windshield. I microwaved leftover chili and stood at the sink while it cooled. At 9:17 p.m., someone knocked on my door. Grey County goes to bed early. Nobody knocks that late without a reason. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened the door. The woman on my porch looked like heat made into a person. Her hair was burned away to ash. Her skin was blistered and cracked. Smoke smell hit me like a wall. She wore a melted shape that had once been a nightgown. Her eyes were wet and bright. "Can I help you?" I said because my mouth works on habit. "I am here to pick up what is due," she said. Her voice was like breathing past a throat full of smoke. "I think you have the wrong address," I tried. "Who are you looking for?" Her gaze moved to the mail on my hall table where I had dropped the orange slips. She saw my name. Her mouth curved in a way that was almost a smile and almost not. "Eli," she said, "we met this summer. Fire, Pike Street." I knew then. I knew, and my body felt hollow the way a house feels hollow after a fire has eaten it from the inside. "Clara Noel," I said, and it came out a whisper. She stepped in without waiting to be asked. The air around her was hotter than my kitchen. She left black marks on the linoleum. She looked around at my quiet rooms like she had never seen a place hold so much air and so little noise. "What do you want?" I asked. "You owe me breath," she said. "You counted mine too fast." I thought of July. Hot, storm-heavy nights. The fire report had come across my desk with a cause marked undetermined, then corrected in red pen to electrical. Time of death, 3:17 a.m., smoke inhalation. I had stamped it, certified it, fed copies to the machine. The family could not pay the extra fee for additional copies. I had been tired. I had closed the window on their faces because the line behind them was long. I had told them to come back only during business hours. "Breath," I said. I cannot give you that. She put a hand on my chest. Her palm was cracked and hot. I felt my ribs tighten around my lungs like the metal rings on a barrel. I tried to step back. She held me in place with a pressure that was not strength, but a rule of physics I could not argue with. She inhaled once. It felt like something tugged loose inside me. Not all my breath, enough to make me drop to my knees. The world went grey around the edges. I heard her exhale somewhere deep in the space between my ears. Then the heat pulled back. On my floor, in the black outline of her footprints, the air cooled. She looked down at me with the same wet, bright eyes and nodded like a bill paid. "We will see each other again," she said, as if that was not a threat but a promise. Then she was gone. My door hung open, and the night outside smelled like wet leaves. I called in sick on Tuesday. I did not know what to tell Marlene. I sat on the edge of my couch with my hands around a mug of tea that went cold and then warm again when I microwaved it. And my chest felt wrong, not just sore, unbalanced, like a ledger off by $1. You can ignore $1 in a ledger. It keeps you awake anyway. The second recall letter was waiting in the office mail tray when I went in on Wednesday. Subject, Death Certificate Recall. Name, Peter Fields. Hypothermia at a bus stop in January. A man with a wool cap and no living relatives. I had signed his certificate and filled out the indigent burial form when no one came to claim him. The new field blinked on my screen. Reason for recall. Pending. I closed the file. I took the letter to Marlene again. She frowned harder this time. "This is not a thing we do," she said. "IT can fix it." I called IT. A man named Josh picked up. He promised to send someone by at noon. No one came. At 3, my screen flashed. Recall process timed out. It stamped itself, recall, without me. The printer hummed and fed out orange slips like a slow bleeding. I took the slips to the mail bin because I did not know what else to do. At 1:53 a.m., someone sat on my front steps and knocked. The knocks were slow and soft like a mittened hand. I opened the door. Peter Fields looked like January had stood up and walked to my house. Frost sparkled on his eyebrows. His cheeks were blue. He held a bus schedule in one hand, folded into quarters. "I am here for what is due," he said, and his voice came out like a breath you make to see your own breath. "Peter," I said, and my breath fogged in my warm house like it was below freezing. "I helped you. I did your paperwork. I got you a plot and a marker. I did everything right." "You did it fast," he said. He smiled. It was gentle. "Fast is a kind of theft. You took time." He touched my wrist. Cold poured up my arm and into my shoulders. I felt the heat leave my skin like a tide. He took a little. Not all. Enough that I curled around my own elbows and shivered on the floor while he watched the clock on my stove blink 1:54, 1:55, 1:56. When he was done, he folded the bus schedule again and slid it into his pocket like a receipt. "Thank you," he said. He walked out into the dark with frost following his steps like glitter someone had spilled. I did not sleep. I sat in my kitchen chair and watched night go thin to grey. The maple in the yard looked like a hook made of black wire against the white sky. My chest felt hollow and my right hand shook. If this is where you think I called the police, I did not. Who do you call to report the dead? Who do you tell that the computer prints letters with your name and the dead come to your door to collect breath and warmth like debts on an account? The third letter arrived on Thursday. Subject, death certificate recall. Name, Tanya Moss, overdose, 32, 2 kids. I had stamped her certificate and taken a call from a woman who claimed to be her sister. She had begged for an extra copy to get custody moving faster. I had told her county policy, 3 copies, $15 for each additional copy. I had told her to come in person. She had cried. I had kept my voice level because policy is policy. I stayed at my desk all afternoon, tried to catch it. Josh did not answer. At 5, the fluorescent lights in the ceiling flickered and hummed like bees in winter. The screen flashed. Recall. The printer coughed. Orange slips. I took them to the mail bin with hands I could not quite feel. Tanya came at 2:07 a.m. I know the exact time because it is written on her certificate. Time of death, 2:07 a.m. at St. Luke's ER. She smelled like rubbing alcohol and cheap soap. Her t-shirt had a cartoon sun with sunglasses on it. Her skin sagged above a bruised vein like a tiny collapsed tent. "What is due?" I said before she could. "My sleep," she said. "You took it when you told my sister to stand in line." She pressed 2 fingers to my throat, right under my jaw. I felt something slide out of me like a coin from a machine. My eyelids went heavy all at once, the kind of heavy that does not wait for a pillow. I fought it. She looked me in the eye while I tried to keep them open. The lights in my kitchen blurred. When I woke up, it was morning, and my coffee maker had run twice without grounds. By Friday, I understood a rule. Every recall letter came with a visit. Every visit took back something I had taken. Not money, not anything you could itemize on a receipt. Breath, warmth, sleep. The little things you do not think you own until you are missing a slice and nothing fits right. I tried to stop the next one. I shut down my computer. I unplugged the printer. It did not matter. When I walked past the basement, I heard noise where there should not be noise. The county records basement is a low space with shelves of birth ledgers and marriage books that smell like glue and dust. The lights are on motion sensors. They flickered on as I hit the last step. In the far corner was an old workstation that I had never seen turned on. Beige monitor. Dot matrix printer with green striped paper that fed from a box on the floor. The printer was walking page after page out of its mouth. Orange. Subject, death certificate recall. Names I recognized and names I did not. At the bottom of each page, in neat black type, my name. Someone sat at the desk. I say someone because it had a shape like a person. It wore a grey sweater that had gone slick with age. It had a halo of paper dust around it like a fog. "You're not supposed to be down here," I said, because my voice goes for rules when scared. "Neither are you," it said without turning. The voice was neither high nor low. It was clever in that way. A machine is clever when it has only one job and does it well. But you work with ledgers. Ledgers belong to the basement. "I did not sign these," I said. "I did not authorize any of this." "You did when you processed them the first time," it said, and kept feeding letters to the hungry printer. "A certificate is a ledger entry. Every ledger balances. When you rush, when you refuse, when you skip a question because the clock says 5, the balance shifts. The dead are owed. Or you are owed if you did a kindness. It goes both ways. But you, Eli, you are efficient." It turned then. The shape had a face that looked like a long exposure photograph of 3 different clerks laid over one another. The eyes were not eyes. They were folders stacked inside folders. "You can fix it," it said. "Balance the accounts, or you can let the accounts balance you." "How?" I asked. "Return what you took," it said. "Time, warmth, sleep, breath, or give what you did not give. Go to the ones you turned away. Find the sister. Give her the copies. Stay late. Answer the phone. Walk across the street with the widow to the notary and stand there with her while she signs. The ledger notices." I do not know if you believe any of this. I did not, even with frostbitten fingers and a chest that ached when I breathed. Belief did not matter. I climbed back upstairs and made a list. I found Tanya's sister on Saturday by calling 3 wrong numbers and then the right one. I told her to meet me at the office. The courthouse was closed. I met her anyway. I certify that I broke policy. I printed 6 copies and did not charge her $1. She cried again, different this time, like her body had been carrying something heavy and put it down. That night no one came to my door. On Sunday, I took a thermos of coffee to the bus stop on 3rd, where Peter had frozen in January. It was clear and cold. My breath made clouds in the blue air. I poured coffee into a paper cup and left it on the bench with an extra pair of gloves and a note that said, "Stay warm," a small thing. I do not know if a ledger noticed. My wrist stopped aching. On Monday, I sat with a woman named Mrs. Warren while she filled out a request for her husband's death certificate. She was 83 and kept losing her place on the form. I read the questions. I did not look at the clock. When she finished, I walked her to the notary, even though I am not supposed to leave my desk. The recall letters slowed. They did not stop. Some names came from long ago. A toddler found in a pond the summer I started. I had cried in the bathroom and then worked until 9, so the mother could go home with papers in her hands. The toddler did not come to my door. I found a $20 bill slipped under my doormat that night with no note. Do not ask me to explain it. A logger crushed under a hackberry out on County Line Road came on a wind that smelled like sap. He stood in my kitchen and looked at my hands. I had stayed late that day to finish his paperwork because the coroner had called me please. He nodded. He put a hand on my shoulder. It felt like a warm sun patch. When he left, the scar on my thumb from a childhood dog bite had faded to a thin white thread I could barely see. Some visits were due even after I tried. The world had a backlog. In December, a letter came that did not belong in any pile I knew. I knew it did not belong because the envelope was old and the paper soft. The county seal was a design we had not used in 20 years. The subject was the same, Death Certificate Recall. The name was one I knew like my own because I had said it every time a form asked mother's name. Margaret Ann Mercer. I sat very still. My desk buzzed with the lights and with blood in my ears. I read the line again. My mother died when I was 8. Brain aneurysm in the kitchen while she stirred a pot of soup. I remember the thumbprint of tomato on the stove. I remember the neighbor who stood with me under the yellow porch light while the ambulance lights painted the snow blue and red and blue again. I remember the months after, where every grown-up voice sounded like it was coming through a wall. I remember the bills that came and went unpaid because a clerk had marked something wrong and the insurance delayed. My father lost the house. I wondered if that clerk grew up to be me. Reason for recall, pending. I took the letter to the basement because I could not open that file at my desk without my hands shaking. The printer was quiet. The old workstation hummed softly like a cat in another room. The thing in the gray sweater was not there. I looked at the box of green striped paper, then at my mother's name. I have been trying, I said to the empty shelves. I have been balancing. This is cruel. The lights clicked off because I had not moved enough. Darkness in the basement is not like darkness in a field. It has weight. I waved an arm. The lights came back, and she stood at the end of the aisle between marriage 1971, 1978, and death 1995, 1999. My mother wore the blue sweater she always wore in winter. Her hair was the color of the kitchen table in our old rental. She had my eyes. She had the look I had seen in pictures from birthdays and the fair. It puts a crack in you, the way a familiar face from before grief can do that. The crack is not bad, it is just real. Eli, she said. Mom, I said, and the word felt both too large and too small in my mouth. She came closer. She smelled like ivory soap and snow on wool. She touched my cheek. Her hand was warm, not the warmth of a logger's sun patch, the warmth of a person. "I am here for what is due," she said, and my heart did a small stupid thing because I had dreamed of her saying words to me for years, and I did not want those words to be that. "What is due?" I asked, and my voice shook. She looked at me the way she used to look when I cried over a scraped knee, soft, steady, not pitying. "I left something with you when I died," she said. "I did not mean to. Your first breath is yours by right. I gave you that. But I took the second when I fell. I have carried it like a stone in my pocket for a long time." She put her palm on my chest. I braced for heat or cold, or the heavy sleep Tanya had pressed into me. None of that came. Instead, I felt a small, tight pain loosen, the way a knot gives way when you pull the right end. I inhaled. It felt like I'd been breathing wrong for 20 years, and someone had just put my ribs in the right order. "I do not want anything from you," she said. "I wanted to return this. You do not owe me. You never did." Tears are a kind of breath. They came from somewhere low in my ribs and up through my throat. She wiped one with her thumb. Her eyes moved like she was taking in the shelves, the stupid bad ceiling, the printer that never quite lined up right. "This is a hard room," she said. "You made it softer." "I do not know if I did," I said. "You did," she said. "But you must be careful. Debt is sticky. It will try to make a home in you if you let it." I wanted to hold her. I wanted to ask 100 questions about the years between 8 and now that she had not seen. I wanted to show her the bent maple and the leaning mailbox and the cheap coffee maker that burned everything if you did not watch it. But the ledger has rules. Her hand was still on my chest. She said my name once more like a benediction and like a goodbye. When the lights blinked, she was gone. The letter that recalled her certificate dissolved in my hands like wet tissue. The system file closed. The name stayed in the index, because names do. Some ledgers are not for closing. You want to know if the visit stopped after that? No. The county kept being a county. People died, people were born. I stamped certifications and I picked up the phone and I stayed late. I broke policy when policy hurt someone more than it helped a ledger. I filled out amendment forms on my own time and drove them to the hospital records office across town so a widow would not have to take 2 buses. I mailed copies on my dime. I learned that kindness has a cost, and that cost is usually an hour. Hours are currency that spend themselves whether you like it or not. Better to spend them on purpose. Some nights I still hear a knock. Sometimes it is someone I helped well. They stand in my doorway and leave me small things I did not know I was missing. A warm patch of afternoon on a winter day, a 5-minute nap that fills a hole in my bones, the sound of my mother humming while she rinses a glass. Sometimes it is someone I failed. They take back what is due and I try to pay up front the next day. There is a ledger behind the counter and another behind the wall, and both balance slow. The recall letters still show up in batches, less often now. I take them to the basement, and the old printer chugs along like an animal that cannot die because it does not know how. The grey sweater clerk does not talk much when I am there. We are both working. It is easier not to look at each other. You may wonder why I stay. People who hear pieces of this want to tell me to quit, to move, to change counties, to be a barista in a city where no one knows my name and the dead ride trains at night and do not come to your door. I think about it sometimes. Then I think about a bus stop on 3rd Street and a woman who needed 6 copies when she could only pay for 3. And a man whose house burned before the fire marshal could find a cause. I count the dead for a living. I do it slower now. I write the time with care. When someone says they cannot pay, I ask questions until there is a way. When someone loses their place on the form, I read it to them. When the line is long and the clock says 5, I stay until the room is empty. On some nights when the wind off the fields makes the duplex settle and creak, I sit on my couch and breathe all the way down. My chest fills without catching. I put a hand where my mother's hand sat and say, "Thank you," into the air. The maple outside scrapes the window. The house answers the way old houses do. I go to the door and make sure the porch light is on. If somebody comes to collect what is due, I want them to see the step, the handle, the quiet. I want them to know I am home.